So I think the biggest thing that I see right now is that women are communicating to men in a way that they're asking them to step up. They're asking them to be more masculine, ultimately be a provider and protector. And men are taking it as an attack. And for me, it's the wrong way to look at it, right? Because the man sees it as his wife's getting on his back, he's nagging him, criticizing him, she won't let him do anything. And actually, it's the complete opposite because women communicate from a place of emotion. So she's letting him know that she feels unsafe, that she don't feel secure in the relationship. But also, and the crucial bit here is that she sees his potential, right? She sees the opportunity that he has to really provide. And he's just, whether it's reluctant, ignorant, like all the things that I was, he doesn't want to see it, right? He takes it because he's applying his more masculine brain, shall we say, to it. He's looking at it logically. He's listening to the words that she's saying, and he's not understanding that what she's actually trying to do here is go, I know that you've got more. I know that there is a more masculine, a stronger, a better man inside of you. And I'm trying to tell you that that's what I want. He's just not listening. And so it ends in arguments, ends in disagreements, and it just blows up.
Yeah, that happens so much. And I've even been in that dynamic myself of not really seeing it as an invitation of like, oh, hey, this is like me. That's what I see in you, and seeing it as, oh, I'm doing it wrong. And I think for a lot of guys, we have a belief that we're not enough, not good enough. We're getting it up wrong. We're fucking it up, whatever the terminology is. I've heard that from many of my friends and myself included. And so it's like when there's an issue that's being presented and whether we don't see our own potential or we don't know the solution, I think that's the default that we go to is, well, we're fucking it up, or, oh, well, we're falling short. And while we might be, and that might be true, that doesn't negate the window of opportunity that we do have to step up, which I think is really important. So I'm absolutely love this conversation. And I've been in many conversations with women also of like, okay, well, how do I like present this in a way, and how do I actually like speak to it to where it doesn't trigger these things? And I think, it takes two to tango. So it's how it's being brought up, but also how it's being heard and received. So I guess, what do you have to say on that part of this conversation?
Yeah, I think it's a natural follow on because in this somewhat controversial or the need of a paradigm shift in how we're seeing and perceiving communication comes that next layer of where's it coming from? And this is where, from my experience, what I'm seeing, all the childhood trauma stuff is being brought to the surface. And I think I have again, a bit of a controversial take on this because it's absolutely relevant. Like, as men, we have to face our shadows. We have to face our fears. We have to overcome these adversities, including our past traumas, in order to evolve, to grow, to step in, whatever we want to describe it as. But I'm seeing a lot of individuals use the labels as excuses to not. Oh, I can't step in because I've got all this trauma to heal and I've got all of these wounds to get over. And I get that, right? I get that. But if you feed into the problem becomes bigger. Yeah. So all the while you're utilizing, and men are utilizing their childhood trauma as the reason why they can't step in, then they're never fucking going to, right? They're never going to step in because they're waiting for the trauma to be resolved. And my take on it is, I'm sorry to piss on your parade a little bit, but once you've healed the trauma, you're not going to feel the way that you think you will, right? You're not going to have this utopia elation of, well, my trauma's healed and now I can fucking step in. I can be that masculine man. It's not going to be that revelation, right? It's part of the journey. It's part of the process. You get better as you heal, but you're getting better all the while. So I think that's what I'm seeing is there's this reluctance to step in because there's this highlighting of, well, your childhood trauma is playing a huge part. Yeah, it is, but it doesn't stop you, right? It doesn't stop you going, let me just take accountability for the moment and look at it on a pure input-output basis, right? If I'm speaking to my wife in a derogatory way, if I'm sarcastic with her, if I belittle her, if I cut her off, if, I dismiss her and her feelings and her emotions and I don't validate her, and it's causing fucking misery in my life, well, maybe if I start by changing a couple of those things, the output might be different. If I validate her and her emotions rather than shut her down, what's the output? What's the difference? And I think it's just being open and I guess bold enough and brave enough to go, yeah, I've got some shit to sort out. But let me start somewhere, right? Let me start changing something and see where that takes me.
That's huge. And I think the attitude of courage is definitely needed, because it's like you're never going to fully feel ready. You're not going to fully feel healed. I love what you said about that. After the trauma is healed, you're still not going to feel the way that you think you're going to. And ironically, this invitation from this woman in your life is the pathway to healing it fully, because you actually get to show up different and you get to show up leaning in with courage. And I think and that's why I refer to relationships as like the dojo for spiritual development, or like the arena for men. And it is for women too. But like, if men can see it as that, then you go, oh, wow, any little thing that's off, it's not my mom getting on to me. This is my soul being called to evolve in some fashion. And this is the perfect sparring partner that is my match spiritually that I'm with right now. And so it's like seeing it as that, I think, is just the lens, that the perspective that men can take, total game changer at that point. Because then you're not, oh, I got this bad knee from an injury that I had 10 years ago. And so I'm a little not as quick on my feet. Like, you're not explaining that shit when you're in a boxing match with somebody. You're just going to keep boxing, even if you know what I mean? And you're going to get over it and you're going to do your best despite the knee that's whatever. You're not going to not get in the ring because of it, unless you then don't. And that can be said, for your relationships and your love life. You just don't participate. And I know men that, whether it's, I'm saying not participating, that's not necessarily intentionally single, but it's also not getting into the development of the relationship and of yourself, of what she's calling you forward into, right? You can emotionally remove yourself, spiritually remove yourself, but still be in the relationship. So I absolutely love that, and the perspective you have on that for men. And I guess, what do you have to say for women in this regard? Because I know before we started recording, you talked about emotional safety being really important in this conversation as well. But how can women start showing up in this way to be better sparring partners in a fashion, or maybe to help their men see this perspective shift?
Yeah, great question. And I think as well, this is the yin and the yang, right? We have to understand that there's two sides to the relationship. There's 50% of the truth on either side. And this is where, from the woman's perspective, my belief is she has to be receptive, right? Because if we look at it, the masculine honors the feminine, and in turn, the feminine worships the masculine, right? So you get that yin and that yang. And then it's also like the masculine can only be as powerful as the feminine will open, and how expansive he allows her to be by creating this safe container. And in turn, he can only be as good as he'll ever be if she is as supportive and open and everything else, right? So one has to feed the other. And in my belief, because the masculine provides the protection element, he has to be willing, not necessarily have to get it right, but he has to be willing to step in. He has to be willing to fuck some stuff up, get it wrong. But on the transcendental, if that's even the right word, journey of, this is going to take me a lifetime and I'm still not going to perfect it, right? So I'm just going to keep stepping in. I'm going to be courageous. I'm just going to keep going. And from the feminine perspective, where the majority of women right now have been holding up the masculine part, right? They've been holding up this big masculine shield. They've been protecting themselves, their family. They've been doing it all, right? And give them credit. They've done a fucking good job. Let's be real, right? But at that point, she's then got to be willing to go, okay, I see him stepping in. I see him trying. I see him holding on to the reins and trying to learn what he was unwilling to learn before. I'm going to back up. I'm going to let go, because again, when we talk about the purest essence of femininity, it's surrender, right? Because it is everything. It's expansive. It's there to be all encompassing in its entirety and its purity. And so if a woman is still holding on and she's not willing to let go, then she can never fully immerse herself in the feminine piece. And so therefore, he can never do as much as he's capable of doing. So it's this union dance of back and forth. And so I think that whilst I know that there are so many women carrying bags and bags of emotion forward. You know, it's weighing them down. You know, they've been fucking strong in holding all of this. They have to, by seeing his behavior change and by knowing his intentions are pure for the benefit of the relationship, have to start to let go. Like, he has to be met with different responses than before. He has to have that very clear recognition of, you know, literally in its purest form, like, this is what I need more of. This is what gets the best out of me. Like, be very specific in the communication and let him know that the way he's stepping in is what you want more of. Because where I see, like, a lot of the time where I'm working with gents and the feedback they get when they start to make change is the same as what they were getting when they were really causing shit to be broken down. So then they're like, well, what's the fucking point? I can't win, right? I'm doing better stuff and I still get met with a resistance, and I'm changing the way I communicate and she's still having a go. And there's that, I guess, reluctance. And from an emotional security perspective, I get it, right? Emotionally, she's been hurt. She's been protecting herself. She's scared, right? She's scared to let her walls down and her guard down. It's the first glimmer that things are changing. But there has to be this element of surrender. There has to be this element of letting go, because that's where the divine unity will start to shine, right? Because he'll start to feel that he's actually doing the right thing. He'll start to feel that maybe it is possible for him. His boldness will change into courage because he'll do it for longer because he's getting the right feedback. And in the same light, you know, there has to be this accountability. The feminine duty is to continually hold up the mirror and go, this makes me feel unsafe. This isn't right. This isn't allowing us to grow. And as long as he's receptive to that, to go, okay, this is my next challenge. This is my next adversity. This is what I can continue to do to grow. And she sees the need and necessity for polarity in herself, i.e., back off and let go where it's needed, but subtly and gently hold up that firm mirror to be like, now you've got to work on this. Then there's a beautiful thing to be created, right? There's this growth and evolution together. Like you were saying, this whole journey, the battlefield turns into a sanctuary, right? It becomes something beautiful because now you're not fighting with each other, you're growing with each other. And I think that's really important from a woman's perspective, because whilst the man holds all the power in the change, the woman holds the power in the amplification of the relationship. So if she's amplifying the wrong shit, it's always a fucking tsunami. Like, yeah, we don't want to be in that all the time. You want to feel the grace, you want to feel the warmth, you want to feel the radiance. And that's where, again, reiterating the point, women have got to surrender into their femininity. They've got to let go. When they start to see the good stuff, they've got to allow it to occur more. Be really specific and be like, this is the power that I need from you. This is the strength I need to see more of. These are the things that get the best out of me. Like, keep doing it, keep going. And then be willing to hold the mirror up and go, yeah, no more of that. Like, see this thing? Like, no more of that. Like, this is where we've got to grow next. So that's why I would say for the ladies who really want to embody femininity, understand what femininity is, and then see that reciprocation in the relationship towards your man.
Yeah. I think it's not being afraid to call them forward in that way. Like, hey, this doesn't work for me, or this doesn't work for us, and this doesn't make me feel safe. And I think even phrasing it just as a man, and I'd love your 2 cents on this, but even just hearing a woman say like, hey, this doesn't make me feel safe when this is happening, it makes me want to be like, all right, cool, done. Like, I'm going to do anything and everything that I can to make you feel safe. So then I'm going to do whatever works necessary on myself. And I think that's the biggest like call forward that evokes that response, at least in me. I don't know if you've seen anything different.
Yeah, I do a lot of work on this, and the rephrasing of how things are communicated, and then I'm with you and how you've described that. It's like, it's looking at it going, look, I feel this when this is occurring. Absolutely makes me feel unsafe, makes me feel, you know, unimportant, whatever that communication is. And then it's being like, and I don't want to feel this. I don't want it to be this way. What can we do about that? Right? What can we do together to change this? And I really like the we being encompassed in that, especially if this change is new for a couple, because that's that invitation of, right, my, like, quite often where this comes from for me, and put some context to it, is women can set the bar way too high and their man will never jump over it, right? He'll never reach the standards. And so sometimes when she's like, I need it to be this way, or she starts to dictate, it gets into a little bit of mothering territory. It's like, you have to do this. And that invites him to become Mr. Nice Guy, especially early doors in the change if he hasn't got the confidence for it. Whereas when you open up the invitation, it's like, what can we do about it? Like, if it were me and I was getting that type of invitation to step in, I'd be like, you don't have to do nothing. I'm going to take control of this. I'm going to take charge. Like, I'm going to own this and I'm going to do this, and this to make sure you never feel that way again. Like, I don't want to bear the burden of responsibility on my wife's shoulders, right? I don't want to burden her with that. So even when she's inviting me in, like, what can we do about it? In my mind, I'm going, you're doing fucking nothing. I'm taking charge. Like, I'm going to take responsibility. I'm going to make this better, because when I do, I know that you're going to be better for it, right? The whole premise of masculine leadership is inspiration and empowerment to the feminine. So why do I want her input into the solution other than taking into consideration what she needs from it, right? If I know what she needs, that's it. That's her input, done. I will take care of the rest. So I really like the encompassing of, like, I feel this way. I don't want to feel it anymore. What can we do about it? Like, that's a really simple kind of structure, shall we say, to a conversation to allow a woman to convey what she's going through and what she's experiencing. Quite rightly, like you said, invite the man in to take charge of that.
And the we framing on a relationship is all the difference versus something that's more me-centric, where it's just like, I don't like feeling that like this. And I think there's so much garbage on social media right now of like the me-centric stuff within relationship. It's like, oh, if you don't like feeling like this, then they're not the one. Or if you don't like feeling like this, then this is how you manifest them to show up different. And it's like, you have a teammate, talk to them. It's just very interesting. I mean, I'm curious if you've seen the same thing on social media, or this is just my algorithm.
Yeah, I see. Probably not as much, but it does creep in. And for me, like, this is that whole giving away your power, right? And it verges on manipulation, right? I'll be this way if you be that way, right? What about my feelings? Like, I get that comment quite a lot. It's like, the angle I take on my content, quite often I get the guys commenting saying, oh, look, it's the man's fault all again, and no accountability for the woman.
Mm-hmm.
And in my head going, your comment shows your victim mentality. Like, it shows it. You feel entitled for her to change first in order for you to be able to do what you need to do. You're giving away your power. Like, at what point do you feel that's going to work out well? At what point do you feel that you're going to get the result or the change in the relationship that you desire by going, yeah, but when do my feelings matter? Well, right now, the sheer fact that your emotions are controlling you shows that they're ruling your life, right? We've got to have that ability to not be reactive and be responsive. And if you're getting emotionally triggered by literally a 90-second video on social media, like, there's your first bit of live feedback. We've moved into this entitled era of, I'm not willing to understand you until you have the same view as me. And that in its essence destroys polarity, because that's where men start getting into the realm of wanting their wife to be more like them. If you're only focused on your feelings and what gets the best experience for you, and you've got no consideration for the other side, like you said, like, you ain't a team. You're not going to do this together. You're not going to find unity and a divine union in the middle, like the competition. It's like, I'll sacrifice your needs to meet mine. It's never going to work out.
And I see that played out so often, that entitlement, no, you need to hear me first. You need to meet my needs first. You need to care about me first, and then I'll change. And I think when both people do that, you're at a stalemate. And at some point, somebody's got to say, you know what, I'm going to make a stand for the relationship and actually show up and start to shift. We talked briefly on a call before jumping on this podcast about your own personal story. Would you mind sharing a little bit about what got you into this work? Because I think that'd be really inspiring to hear from people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the premise of it for any man out there is the realness of my story is why I guess so many people have related to it. So if I wind the clock back to just before my daughter was born 5 years ago, I was a very different man, right? I was egocentric, I was money driven, and I was lost, to summarize it. Yeah, I was 5.5 stone heavier than I am today. I was very lazy. I was very lethargic. Like, I'm just very different in how I showed up. But actually, when I look at it, I was your average man in the 21st century Western world, right? I was, I was convenience driven, thought that my contribution to a marriage and a relationship was all money orientated. Like, hopefully that sets the picture of where I was just 5 years ago. Essentially what happened over time is that became my identity, right? I saw my contribution to the relationship as the financial contribution, and I somewhat gave no regard to the emotional side of my input, right? What I needed to do. I was very much of the mentality, well, emotions, they're a woman's thing, right? So that's my wife's remit. She's got to deal with that stuff, and her emotions got nothing to do with me. And that was really my mentality. Whilst if you had ever engaged with me, you never would have known that, because again, talking about that stuff was not something I felt comfortable or confident in talking about. It just evolved and it just grew and developed and whatnot. And essentially where I got to is on the ups and downs of where it were, and all through 2020 and 2021, I had my own crashes and, pits and all the rest of it I had to go through, depression, suicidal tendencies, like all this other stuff. Nowhere in that process did I ever give consideration to how strong my relationship was, right? And when we had financial stability, it was in those moments that my wife wanted to leave me most, right? She didn't enjoy my company. She didn't enjoy being around me for all of the things that I mentioned before. Because when I was looking at it, I wasn't putting anything into the relationship other than money, right? Let's be really real. We live in a world where a 12-year-old could start a YouTube channel and make millions of dollars a year. Like, a woman don't need a man to like have the financial provision these days. And so the first time that my wife said she needs some time away from me, it kind of took me by surprise, but I thought it was just a circumstance that we were experiencing. We'd had a lot of turbulence just with the material side of our life, let alone the actual relationship side, but we had, a daughter and whatever else. And in 2021, I lost my business and we had to move out of the house and all this other shit. Like I went through a real kind of the pit of it. And that was a real turning point. My wife, like, I didn't think that we were going to be kind of staying together at that point. She needed some time away from me. But fortunately, it didn't end in that. And I went on this journey from that point of trying to really understand kind of what things were, or why things were playing out the way that they were, but I still didn't. Like, even after my wife had said that she needs some time away from me, I still didn't take it serious, right?
Mm.
And I think it's at this point, it's worthwhile me noticing that this is the trend that I see with the men that I work with, right? Their wife has given them some form of an ultimatum and they still don't take it serious, right? Because they don't think that she's actually going to leave, or they don't think that it's as bad as what it is. Because go back to what I was saying before, they come at it from a logical and a rational standpoint. They don't experience the emotion that she is. So it don't feel as bad to them. On her side, it's fucking atrocious. Like, she is really amplified. So that was me at that stage. And then about a year later, because nothing had really changed emotionally, so we're kind of verging into 2022, my wife sat me down and she was like, I'm done. Like, I'm done. I've had enough. She packed her bags. They were in the hallway with the kids' bags ready to go. And it was at that moment that I was like, oh, fuck. Like, I advocate myself as a family man, and my family's about to leave me. So, like, I'm a fucking hypocrite, right? Like, I'm nothing more than a hypocrite to say I do all of this stuff for my family, and now my family wants to leave me because they can't stand to be around me. And for me, that was a pinnacle moment. Like, I've done content on this, but I had a choice then. It was either like my ego takes over and I point the finger and say my wife needs to change and it's her fault, where's her commitment and all this other stuff. Or I look at it for what it is and go, like, oh, I'm missing something here and I need to learn what that missing piece is. And that really, like, took a toll on me. I really questioned myself. I questioned my integrity. I questioned who I was as a man, as a father, as a provider and a protector and all this other stuff. And I was broke at the time. Like, I was absolute broke. And I didn't have the convenience of working with someone or hiring someone to help me turn it around. I had to just use the disposable resources that I had, books and podcasts and blogs and whatever else. And for me, that was when I really started to take masculine and feminine energy serious and really dive into spirituality and look at the significance and importance of it. And to say I had a paradigm shift is just, it's an understatement. Like, I for the first time, I could see everything that I never saw before because I started to take it serious. And from that point on, like, our financial situation didn't get better very quickly. And I was investing in making the relationship better and stronger. And in October 2023, for the last time, fingers crossed, we were made homeless once again. And that was it for me. I was like, that's enough. And the reason I was like, that's it, was because my wife didn't want to leave me. Like, I'd invested so much emotional stuff into the relationship between the beginning of 2022 and then the back end of 2023. Like, the best part of 2 years of investing emotional input into the relationship. She was like, it doesn't matter, we'll figure it out. It doesn't matter, you'll know what to do. Like, I had her full support when we had nothing material. And that was the game changer. And then I was like, for me, like, if for any man listening to this, like, this is why the significance of understanding emotional security, emotional intelligence, being able to speak your wife's language, like, all this stuff is so crucial, because we had nothing. Like, we had nothing material, and my wife had my back. Like, to say that lit a fire in my belly to do something about it is an understatement. I was like, I get it now. I absolutely fucking get it. And since then, everything has changed. And it's not even been another year, so that's in a synopsis. That's like my journey, should we say, the ups and the downs with the relationship side of it. But the last 10, 11 months, that's been the real clincher for me on why polarity, masculine and feminine dynamics, spirituality, and a man embodying that as part of him, what he brings to the relationship, it is the security blanket, right? Is the security in the relationship. Because when you give that as your act of service to serve the world and your wife, she's not going to go anywhere, because that emotional sanctuary, that security, that protection, no one can provide that off the cuff. No one can provide that, right? That is the thing that she gets from nobody else. And that's why she'll stay.
Yeah, it's the real type of provision and providing, the real type of support. And I think, the world sells us the idea of it being financial. And like you said, for things like YouTube and stuff now, the world has changed a lot, and that's not necessarily needed as much anymore. Although, there are different dynamics for different relationships. So you said it, you got it, and things clicked. And if you could just speak to the men for a second, what did you get?
The easiest way for me to describe that is I got what was important in a relationship, and I got what it meant to be a provider and a protector of your family, right? So I think for me, that was the ability to strip out the material facade and I provide money, so what the fuck are you complaining about mentality. It was very much, right, so if I meet your needs, if I provide emotionally, if I'm emotionally available, if I can hold space, if I can communicate effectively, and I'm aware of the energy in our relationship, if I can give you all of that and I can bring in money so you don't have to, I'm now a provider, right? I now understand that definition. So I think that's the biggest thing that clicked. It was like, right, the narrative in the mainstream of being a provider typically revolves around the material things, and that's why relationships are breaking down. That's why marriages are failing, because it's not what it means to be a provider. And for me, that was the click. That was like, fuck, like, now I get it. Now I understand what it actually means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's amazing. And I'm sure you've talked with your wife about some of this. Like, what was that process like for her, and what was the click for her of fully choosing in again? Because it seemed like she really wanted to leave, and there was like this, time you weren't getting it. If you could explain anything on that end for the ladies listening.
Yeah. Great question. Because this is the other side of the perspective that I don't really share, right? Not on social media anyway. because my message is always conveying from the controllable, which is what the man can do ultimately. So from my wife's perspective, she basically was like, well, you've told me this before, so why should I believe you this time? Right. And so there was an element of like me having to go, I will change and not beg. Like I wouldn't say I ever begged her to stay, but the question that I asked her was, does leaving provide you with the reality that you want to experience? Right. And like me, she don't want a broken family, you know? So she was like, well, no, because if I leave, it breaks the family and that's what I don't want. So I was like, right, allow me to not let that happen, right? Allow me to not let the family break. And it was a pivotal question. It really was a pivotal question because I think when I reflect on it now, if I had not asked her that question, I don't think I would have saved it in that moment. I really don't.
Hmm.
So she gave me the space, is what I'm getting at. She was like, okay, like she accepted she didn't want the broken family, but she'd heard it all before. So for the first 6 months of me changing and me doing the work and this, that, and the other, I couldn't really say I got much back in the form of, oh yeah, you're doing a great job. Oh yeah, this is so much better. And I didn't really get the verbal affirmation of this is the right stuff to do because I was figuring it out. Yeah, I was reading books, listening to podcasts and going, I fucking hope this works. Right. And so there was kind of a yin and a yang in the sense of she wasn't really attuned to what I was doing. She was just observing. And I didn't really know how she felt because I wasn't getting much feedback. So it was kind of like my mentality was, well, if she's telling me she's leaving, then it must be going in the right direction, right? Because she probably would have left already. So that was the only gauge I had to go off is, well, she's still here. She's not telling me she hates me and she wants to leave. So it's got to be going in a direction of sorts. And it was about the 6 to 9 month mark where then conversations really got better. And she really started to speak to me more open. I would say that we started to connect more. And that's where I can now look back on and it was like, right, doing all of what I did around my behavior, around my communication, around doing or changing my influence into the relationship, that built the emotional security and what I now call the sanctuary, right? Because that allowed her to open, that allowed her to soften. So after that 9 month period, I would then say there was another 12 months of refinement. And it was like, right, now I'm getting feedback. Now I'm getting the reciprocation. Now things feel like they're moving in the right direction. And again, most people on the outside looking in would not know this was going on, right? They wouldn't know this was happening because it was very like, hush, hush, don't talk about it. Don't want anyone to know we've got a real problem or anything like that. So nobody would have known that we were going through this and I was doing all this work intrinsically for the relationship at the time. But that 9 months and then a further 12 months of just embedding it all, which brings us, only to a couple of months ago, really, that I can look at that and go, this is it. Like, this is the stuff that no one can break. This is the emotional security. But back to your point on the question, is it's like my wife backed up. Like, is the easy way for me to describe it. She gave me the space and she let my actions do the talking, and it wasn't just he changed his behavior for 2 or 3 weeks. She was in that like observing ego perspective for like 6 months. And she didn't make my life harder. She gave me some consideration that I had to go through some changes and I had to lead on this. Like she weren't mothering me. She didn't tell me what to do. She didn't tell me how I had to do it. She let me figure it out. And that was her part to play. And then when she felt comfortable, when she felt safe, she stepped back in. And then the reciprocation happened, the appreciation, the recognition. And then all of a sudden, she started to amplify. She started to give me more. And I was like, okay, now I know where I'm at. Right. Let's really move this on.
Man, even just hearing that was like calming to my nervous system that she gave you the space. She wasn't telling you what to do. She let you figure it out. And I was just like, yes, like that's the way to do it. Like she already had pointed out all the things. You already know the ways you were falling short. And I think sometimes in relationship, people can just repeatedly beat the same thing up over and over again. And that can actually cause more damage than it is supportive. allowing that space and allowing people to actually work through it in time and effort. It's a beautiful story, man. And I just want to say, I really acknowledge both of you for going through that, and want to say thank you, because your content is amazing. That's going to be down below in the show notes for anybody who wants to check out your work even deeper. But what are you seeing content wise that's hopping off right now for you? What is it that people are really wanting to know, or I don't know, where's the consciousness of people that are tuning into your work? What are they eating up right now?
So the biggest thing that it is resonating is anything around the emotional security side of things, and how men and women communicate, back into what we were discussing right at the beginning. Like, it's breaking the conditioning of only what we've been told on how a relationship should function best. Like, we've been fucking lied to, right? We've been lied to. And if relationships were supposed to work the way that we've been told they should function, then we wouldn't be experiencing the breakdowns that we are. Again, it's simple input and output. If the inputs were really good, the output would not be dog shit, right? And so that's what I think is landing at the most. Like, when I'm talking about why women are angry in the relationship, why they're frustrated, why they're building up like the resentment, and it's not because of anything malicious per se, it's just pure lack of understanding, right? Guys don't know how to build emotional security, and neither men and women, unless they've gone through training and opened up their minds, they don't know how to communicate to each other effectively, right? And it's a definition of insanity to keep doing the same things and expecting things to be different or to change, right? It's not going to happen. So anything around emotional security, that's landing really strong at the moment, and I'm doing a lot on that. And my couples program is all geared around emotional security, because it's the fundamental pillar that is missing, right? So there's that side of it. Communication is a big one, like how to phrase sentences, how to be direct but be gentle. Like in my men's specific program, I've got like probably about 10 trainings now, just all around how you break down structures of conversations, just to be able to be direct and bring structure to a conversation and continue to lead, but be compassionate and be soft and be direct, so that your wife feels that you're not pussyfooting around and treading on eggshells talking to her, but you do it in a calm way where she's like, oh, okay, you're here for me to have a discussion with me. You're not here to fucking just go at me and criticize or dismiss or anything else. So communication, emotional security, and then again, like that, the big one I was talking about earlier, it's for women to be able to bring this up, right? To be like, look, see potential in you. I see your capability to make our relationship better, and I'm highlighting where it's breaking down. And for men not to take that as an attack, not to take it as a criticism, but as an invitation to go, right, let me embody my flaws, let me embrace the things. So these are the big things. I do a mix on the content. I do some like, majority of my content is just me talking to the camera. And then I'll do like just the short 4 to 10-second reel side of things as well, hitting on a home point. And it's just always just landing well at the moment. It really is. Like, I'm speaking from experience, right? I experienced this stuff. I went through it. I get it, and I understand where these relationships are right now. So at the moment, I'm just showing that, look, I had to go through 2 years of figuring it out on my own, and now I can help you do the same. So I'm laboring the point on, you can make these changes and you can do it. You just got to stop believing the lies on what constitutes a good relationship.
Right. Very true. Well, what all do you got going on in terms of what you're creating right now? So I know you were also mentioning you got some new stuff you're working on.
Yeah. So I've literally just released the couples program. So this is a standard 12-week program, like really in depth. I've probably gone, too far in depth in some areas of it, but for me, it's what I needed when I was going through this. So it's called the Primal Reconnection Program, and effectively, it is showing men and women how they can go through the journey together, right? Because a lot of individuals and couples, they come to me because therapy ain't working, right? And with all due respect to the therapists out there, therapists get paid on repeat custom. Yeah, like you have to keep going back in order for them to maintain livelihood, right? I get it. However, for me, it forces more separation because when one individual is in therapy or when they're both in therapy together, it's about the problems. Whereas I'm more action orientated, right? Let's get to the root, let's understand it. Now let's proactively get away from this. And I see it as my duty for anybody that I work with to never need me again, right? If your relationship is going to be sustainable, you don't want me as a fucking intermediary for the rest of your life. Yeah. You want to be on your own 2 feet and make it work. So I was just doing men's work before. So I've got a Primal 111 program, which is 111 days transformation for men. But all the one-to-one work that I was doing and the feedback that I was getting, I was like, need to. It's not even that I want to. It's like I need to create a couples program just to debunk the bullshit, right? Just to debunk it and be like, look, just don't listen to this stuff, right? Focus on this, grow and evolve together, most importantly, and allow each individual to lean in. Because one of the big gripes that I have is this whole premise of equality, right? We ain't in 50-50 relationships, right? It's not about equality in a traditional sense. Like, if you have the mentality that you want a 50-50 partner, don't fucking get married, right? Don't do it because it's not going to work. Like, men and women are fundamentally different on basically every level. You need to be 100% in for your strengths. And then you need to be 100% willing to work on your weaknesses. So equality, I feel, is destroying relationships because we ain't 50-50. So my couples program is got nothing about equality in it, right? The only quote unquote equality based principle that I have is that you believe your partner is doing all they can to improve the relationship. And that includes highlighting the flaws. And there are just better ways to effectively communicate the work that needs to be done. And you get to enjoy the experience together. So I've literally just launched that. It's very in depth. It's very thorough. At the moment, it's just exclusive. I'm working with 10 couples only just to really embody the change and the growth. And I see that potentially being a lot of or at least 50% of the work that I end up doing long term, whereas it's been 100% largely men's work. But that's where my attention is right now. It's programs, transformational for men and transformational for couples to cut the crap. It really is like get into embodying the work that actually works and embracing evolution and growth together.
Absolutely love it, brother. Well, thank you for coming on the show and sharing your heart, sharing your story, your wisdom with us. For anybody who is resonating with you and your work, I'll share the links down below in the show notes. So y'all go check out his stuff. I mean, obviously Grant's a really real person, and that's what I really respect about you. And I just want to say, again, thank you for showing up and continuing to do the work, not just in your life, but supporting others to do the same.
A pleasure. And thank you, Kevin, more so for having me on the show and able to share the journey that I've been through. And, if it lands with one person and they get a lot from this, then, it's been time well spent nonetheless. So I really appreciate your time as well.
You're very welcome.